really stupid things to start off with, like canceling the pipeline from Canada. Not that that made a huge difference, and we wouldn't have dramatically lower energy prices right now. But why would you do anything, that would make this situation worse? So, it's a pox on both their houses as far as I'm concerned. And I've long believed that any president gets a lot more blame and a lot more credit for the state of the economy than they actually deserve, just because it's not like they're sitting up there with their hands on dials that they can just control things up and down.
Look, y'all are all probably familiar with kind of the loose term modern monetary theory and the belief that by some politicians that government should be able to spend as much as they need to spend to provide free education, free housing, free food, free healthcare. And, Elizabeth Warren, others, there's got to be a time when, our debt is like a giant Ponzi scheme. Who's going to continue to lend us money? I don't know. Charles, y'all have anything to say?
I just got back from Vietnam, and it's interesting to see the evolution of that economy. Of course, it's a communist nation, but it runs much like a social democracy. I mean, there's a lot of business and enterprise and opportunity. There is free education. There is free healthcare, right? There are free amenities that the government provides to the people, but it's a contractual thing. I mean, at the same time, the people have to provide for themselves. They have to open up businesses. There are now regulations when you drive your moped around. I mean, they run, there's got to be a balancing act to all of that. It can't just be one way or the other. It's got to be a contract between the people and the systems that provide for things like free healthcare and free education.
Yeah. It depends on how you spend the money and what incentives that provides. It's to just say we're going to spend more money or less money is a false argument. The question is, how are you spending it? If you're spending it on getting people journalism degrees or English literature degrees, that's not going to, make the country incredibly more productive. If you spend it on getting people electrical engineering degrees and petroleum engineering degrees and things that actually will produce increased productivity, then, it's going to be good for the economy. But just to send people money to sit at home like we did is the worst possible thing you can do.
Hey, this is the first time I've been with this panel since the runoff elections. Let's handicap what's going to happen here in Harris County. Really give me a clear-eyed assessment of Alex Mueller versus Lina Hidalgo. Mustaffa.
Look, I think the county is still a Democratic county. It's not, the math has not changed. Is this a more difficult environment for a Democrat with an incumbent Democratic president? Yes. Are the headwinds changing a little bit because of Roe versus Wade, this gun issue? Yes. So I think it's going to be a close election, but at the end of the day, I think she's going to pull it out, and because the laws of gravity and physics don't change, right?
Charles, if Mueller signed you up as chief advisor, strategist, what would you tell her to run
on trying to set forth on kind of what her vision for Republican is? I think the problem is that Republicans in major urban areas often get caught up in a larger national Republican narrative, one that doesn't address the issues that they're running for office to address. And so they get caught up on these issues. Like, there's no reason to be talking about Roe versus Wade in the county judge race. And like Bill said before, it doesn't move votes. One of the interesting things I saw was that after 48 hours after the Roe versus Wade leak, progressive groups raised $12 million. 48 hours after RBG died, they raised $90 million. So it's not something, in my opinion, that is going to motivate progressives that much. So I think Republicans in urban areas get often caught up in these national conversations. But, I think we have an interesting opportunity this cycle because, like Mustaffa said, the headwinds are there. You have the national issues, but you have local issues. I mean, we cannot ignore the corruption or alleged corruption or perceived corruption or however you want to frame it at our county level. Crime is an issue that every single person is talking about. And every day, I can imagine that every person, or at least a majority of people in Harris County who are of voting age, have a conversation about crime and about the price of their gas. Those are probably two things that cross their mind or come out of their mouth every single day. And so leading into November, that's still going to be an issue, and it's only going to get even bigger. And Black folks, as we've seen in LA in this past election, as we've seen in Buffalo, as we've seen in New York, Minneapolis, Dallas, are not going with progressives the way that they used to. People, I think progressive policy works everywhere except reality, and minority urban voters are starting to see that and starting to go a different way. Does that mean they're going Republican? Maybe not what Republican used to mean, or maybe not Republican means on the national level, but on a local level, when you have an opportunity to redefine what Republican is, I think it offers a unique opportunity.
I mean, what about that, Bill and Gary? You know, there is a narrative here to where we're at a watershed election, and we're either, and if we stick with kind of the progressive ideologues, we're going to move more in the direction of San Francisco than we want. I mean, is that a viable narrative?
I think that's obviously the fear of the electorate. Look, Chase Boudin meet Lena Hidalgo. That's our version of Chase Boudin, the person who wanted to change our criminal justice system to be soft on crime, not to build more jails. And that's before you get into all the corruption. Look, at the end of the day, remember, she did not win the election last time. Beto O'Rourke won that election for her with the straight ticket vote. No straight ticket vote this time. Beto O'Rourke is not nearly the candidate he was 4 years ago. So I think that Ms. Mueller has a really great opportunity. Look, she has an awesome resume. You know, she's highly educated, military leader, smart as a whip, and serious. I mean, she's a serious lady to deal with our serious problems. And she's going to focus like a laser on the two issues that matter that was indicated by the panel, crime and corruption. And I think that she's going to be formidable. And the other thing to look at, which has really impressed me, was her victory in the runoff was a blowout. I mean, it was an amazing victory. And I had a conversation with Alexandra the week after the election to talk about that and how impressed I was. She ran a great campaign. And she's going to run a great campaign in November. And what you have going with Lena Hidalgo is the crying game. She whines. She gets in the media, and every week she's crying. I'm a victim. They're after me. Oh my God, my Democratic DA who's really in bed with the right wing, et cetera, are after me, and we didn't do anything wrong. Well, I anticipate she will be indicted sometime this summer. She'll get her day in court someday, but the voters are going to get to vote first in November, and I think she's going to get beat like a drum.
You know, I spent some time with Paul Castro. He's the father of the young man that was shot and killed coming out of the Astros game, and he's made it his initiative and his kind of way of grieving is to fight back against the bail reform stuff. And, you know, I never understood it the way he talked about it. He's really, you know, it's a bail reform commission, and then it's the bail bonds companies, right? I mean, he basically, the way in talking to him, what I learned was that it's a racketeering business. It's a money laundering business, right? You get
that's not, you know, that's not
let
accurate.
me like,
I mean, you know, but Mustaffa, you can have your own opinions. You can't have your own facts. And the fact is, most of the people who get out of jail are released on personal recognizance bonds, or even bonds that not even PR bonds. You just give them a bond and told goodbye, and that's in misdemeanor court and in felony court. And then the other misnomer is that the judges, at least most recently, are not tough enough on violent crime. They actually are. They have changed their attitude, despite the pressure from Rodney Ellis et al. To not do that.
I would like to hear about what Paul Castro said, because I did attend that bail committee hearing with him there. So I'm curious to hear what his...
I mean, what his thing is, I mean, he just basically pointed out the bail bonds company that bonded out the killer of his son. That's what he went after, yeah. Right? And he found that information out. FBI raided them about 2 weeks ago. They netted $200 million last year just in their business right here in Harris County. And, you know, he basically showed how this works, right? They put the individual puts up 2%, they put up the rest. They bail this person out. They charge them ungodly amount of interest, and as they charge them this ungodly amount of interest, how does somebody who's committed a crime, has a criminal record, make money to pay back this bond? Right? They commit more crime. And I think that what he is saying as a father of a kid who's died is worth listening to, rather than listening to the rhetoric.
But you have to know the facts, Mustaffa. And the fact is, we don't have a 2% bond anymore.
You get
We have a
angry when
10%
I
bond.
interrupt you, and then
That's
you
not
do
true,
it all the
Gary.
time.
Gary, that's not true.
Yeah.
That is not what I heard at the bail.
No,
reform.
they
That
adopted
is
a 10%
no, we
requirement.
all assume it's a 10%. These guys, exactly what Mustaffa say, are getting off on 1% interest month to
Well,
month.
look,
It is-
I'm
I
there.
had no
work
idea.
in the I work in
Right.
the courthouse.
I know, but
I
Greg, you
work with
and I
bonding
always assume
companies.
it's 10%.
Can I get in here
It's
for a
not.
second? Can I get in for a second?
Go ahead.
First of all, I thank you for, talking about all Paul Castro, a member of the SAM party's hard work on this issue. And the truth of the matter is, until the bail commission passed the new rule, exactly what he described was going on. Now, they've passed a new rule that requires a 10%. Whether it's enforceable, whether they're doing it, and we don't know exactly what the results of that are, because it's only been in place for about 30 days. But he perfectly described what was going on. Now, Gary's also right. The whole lot of people are let out without any bonds, although I also have heard the same thing Gary did, which is that after the Democratic primary, when a lot of these guys got thrown out of office in the Democratic primary, were some of the worst offenders about letting violent criminals go, got defeated in the Democratic primary. But to the larger issue about the Mueller Hidalgo race, I think my guess is it's going to be very, very close. And here's how I do the math on it. If you look at the 2020 judicial races, okay, this is after there was no straight party voting anymore, and there was no real, there was nobody at the top of the ticket that really was inspiring anybody other than, people were going to vote against Trump in that election, I guess, but it was still about a 6 to 8 point spread in most of those judicial races for the Democrat. Now, the fascinating thing about it, in almost all of those races, there was almost a 10% undervote in the Democrat in the general election in the judicial races. Now, you really haven't changed. You don't have many more people registered in Harris County because our population growth has been flat. We probably lost a few people over the last few years. So you're going to have about the same number of people voting. The question is, number one, are people going to get that far down on the ballot and treat the Mueller Hidalgo race differently than they're going to treat other judicial races? I'm not sure they are. I'm unconvinced of that. We haven't ever seen that before. And if they just treat it like regular judicial races, I do think that most people in Harris County are blaming the judges for the crime. Now, there's been a pretty constant media narrative about that, and that seems to be what most people think. So I think you've got, Mustaffa's right, it's still a Democratic county, but you've got these national headwinds. I don't know what degree those really affect it. You've got the crime headwind against all Democratic judges, I think, this time. And then I think I would not underestimate the significance of the scandals. And I think there's going to be more to come out on that. Whether she's going to be indicted or not, I have no idea. But for independents, the people that I tend to speak for, scandals are an issue. Corruption is an issue. Character is an issue. That's why so many people that were Republicans broke with Trump, because it was a character issue. They might have agreed with him on policy. They said, I don't, even if I agree on policy, I'm not going to vote for somebody of that character. And so I think what we've seen in that vaccine contract is a real problem of character for Hidalgo. And I think for independents that are paying attention, that's likely to swing in the other direction. So how all of those cross currents end up coming out at the end of the day, I don't know. But my guess is that's going to be a very close election.
Charles, jump in here. We haven't heard from you, but it's been a good discussion.
I started it.
I know.
I know what you said. Say it again.
No, I agree. I mean, I think in Bill's analysis of kind of looking at the judicial races, I think is important and something to acknowledge. And I think, the fact that the county judge is so buried down on the ballot, people don't know what a county judge is still. As much as Lena has expanded kind of the visibility of that position, of that role, people still do not understand what it really is. I keep seeing these memes go around from folks who oppose her that say things like she violated the judicial canons and this and that. Like they don't know that this is not an actual judge position. And then with the scandals, I agree that with Bill that you can't underestimate their impact, but I don't know how many people know about them yet, and if they're going to know about them in time. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's, very intelligent, not involved in politics at all. And I brought it up and he didn't know, like he just did not know that 3 of her staffers had been indicted. And I kind of explained to him and broke it down and he got it. And he's like, well, that's like he understood quickly why it's a problem, but he just didn't know. And so that makes me wonder how many people truly don't know, who aren't sitting here steeped in politics or in the news all the time. And if that message is going to trickle down, I assume it will. The campaigns are going to do everything they can to try to make that happen. But I think that, getting to the general electorate for people who have no idea what this office is, don't really pay attention to it in general, don't yet know about the corruption. I think the only thing that's motivating them right now is going to be crime and probably cost of living issues and quality of life issues, which you can blame on federal or local government. But I do still think, all that aside, that the trends are favoring Republicans. I mean, even in, with the recent HISD wins. And I just think if you look over the past 18 months at some of the wins in major urban counties, they've either trended towards Republicans or at least centrist Democrats, if it's a nonpartisan election. And I think it offers a window that is quickly closing here in Harris County, but with the right branding and right message and right campaign in person, could actually be a success in November.
Does that race draw
think about
national
that.
money? Does
Yeah.
this race
for
draw
sure,
national money?
For sure.
Both sides,
Both,
yeah, I
both
think.
sides for sure.
I think more than the national money, I think that what the governor's races do, like where does Abbott's money go and how does it get used here in Harris County? What does Beto do here? Because more than even the national money, I mean, Abbott's sitting over, $40 million, they'll have 50 plus. Beto's going to have a significant amount of money, and Harris County is where the votes are. I mean, I think that's something that statewide politicians are starting to understand, that the vote count here is pretty significant, and that's why they took out the straight county vote too, straight party vote too, right? Because it was a sense that in bigger counties the wind was going in the other direction, so
Right.
they changed the system to benefit them.
Yeah. But I don't, well, first of all, I don't think Abbott's going to spend that much money in Harris County. They're going to spend it in the suburbs and the exurbs, or those are the fortress precincts for them. But I'm curious, Mustaffa, what you think about the overall turnout. I've got this sense that the turnout's not going to be that high this time. I just don't see anything motivating people. People are sort of turned off. A lot of Democrats that I've talked to are like, look, we went out and got all these people that voted and hadn't made any difference about anything. Things are worse off and they're worse. So why bother with it this time? I don't know. I might be wrong about that, but it just seems like to me the voting pattern that we saw in 2018 and 2020, which shifted to a little bit younger demographic and a little bit higher turnout, may sort of retreat. And one thing that makes me think that was the primary turnout this time. You saw for the first time in, I don't know, 6 or 8 years, there were more people voted in the Republican primary than the Democratic primary, but both of them were not, big, robust turnouts.
I think you hit on something that, and I think we all know this, but I'll just say it. The president's party always does worse in midterms because the president's party believes like, hey, we got our guy elected, we didn't get what we wanted. And then the other side is animated and says, I want to, I want to push back and get what I want, and turns out. And that's just historically, that's been the thing. I think what's changed over the last, I would say, 6, 7, 8 years in politics is that we're seeing increased turnout because public opinion is moving faster than ever before. We're more interconnected now emotionally to each other than ever before. Something happens, there's a video, there's a picture, it moves us. And that has been ginning up turnouts. And so, like we were talking about, is there a mass shooting? Is there an impact from Roe versus Wade? How many people turn out on the street? Do these issues converge? Is there a a massive crime wave that happens right before? Is there something at the border that gins people? We don't know these things, but what we do know is that we're more connected than ever before, and our opinions move much faster, and that independent core in the middle is fudgy, right? They will swing this way or that way very easily based on what is the issue of the day. And elections are long. It's a 2-week long period when we're voting.
Can I ask Charles a question? Can I ask Charles a question? And this is a curious question that I pondered after reading another article. Could you sway the movement if you brought young people through social media channels like TikTok and raise that messaging? And I think, Mustaffa, you could probably speak to this being a communications expert. I think TikTok is where people are going to get their opinions and to hear from people. So if you get these young influencers to impact policy or politicians or elections, you might have to do it through social media channels, not traditional media, not 7 p.m. primetime news channels, but TikTok.
No, and I agree, and it's funny because I've spoken.
You want to get young people to vote? Go send your messages on TikTok.
On TikTok, truly, and I've talked to a number of Republicans who have said that they have spent years trying to convince their kids to vote Republican, but then they saw a TikTok video that did it in a heartbeat, that somebody broke down some issue.
Come on,
or got them
guys.
to some
No, Bill, look, I'm not a TikToker.
Average voting age is 65 in this country. I
But-
mean,
but
come
we're
on.
saying-
But what we're
serious.
saying is,
For as
Getting them
long as I've been
involved.
in politics, I've heard this, we're going to
No.
get young people to come vote.
no,
There was a
but
slight
young
increase
people,
we're not
18
getting them in a
20.
vote in mass. We're
But
talking
we're-
about swaying the ones who
public
do wanna vote.
opinion.
Yeah, swaying the ones who do want to vote, and they are impacted by what they're seeing on social media.
Yeah,
Now-
and
We did a poll in my mayor's race, and we asked people. Now these were city voters, which is a smaller group. We asked them, how many of you are on Facebook? It was 29%. How many of you are on Twitter? 9%. 9% of.
but you're
of
talking
city
about old
voters
people
were
like
on-
us. I'm talking about young
on
people.
Twitter.
I'm
They
talking
don't
about the
vote.
18 to 25.
Young people
priming.
don't vote for a reason, which is people
Well,
don't start
we gotta
voting
start-
until they buy a house. You can go back and look at this as far back in history as you want.
Well,
It's not until young people buy a house, they start
Well, they're
worrying
not
about
buying houses
taxes,
right
they start
now.
worrying about crime, they start worrying about where their kids are going to school. That's when they start voting.
Bill,
But I think we're in a different era, Bill.
Yeah.
I think that the amount
Where
of
is it in the
social-
numbers? Where is it in the numbers? Show me the
Let me
numbers.
throw something in there that might be helpful. I think TikTok for the last 3 years was the #1 downloadable application in the world. A billion users and exponentially growing. And so, like when we talk to our clients, the biggest issue TikTok. Like, what are we doing on there? What are we gonna? And the reason for it is that it's moving people emotionally than other platforms because it's so video driven. You can add both music and content and delivery in a way that moves people faster, and the videos play faster. So that is something that both in corporate sector and politics is capturing people. And Bill's right that it's not going to move municipal voters that average age 65, but in a wave election, when we're seeing like if you look at Beto's success last time, it was young voters, right? I mean, he got independence, but he mobilized a lot more younger voters than any Democratic candidate had before. So, Bill, I don't think that thing's going to change the makeup of the electorate by 10%, but if it moves it by 3 or 4% and brings people that aren't going to vote, I think it makes a difference.
All right, there's 80 million TikTok users in the United States, which is, of course, less than a quarter of the country. And of that, over half are under 18. So that means there's 40. So there's about 9 or 10% of the American people of voting age who are TikTok users. And then, of course, only about 70% of the American people are, registered to vote. So that means you might have, 6 or 8% of registered voters are you on TikTok. And then how many of them actually use it? This is just not what moves election, folks. I'm sorry.
Here's what I see.
The
It's
reality.
not about moving the election. It's about influencing that generation. These are the kids who are showing up and leading the protests left and right. If you want to influence them 10 to 15 years before they become voters, you have to start doing it now. They have to start getting that information.
For a few years, even if they're under 18, Bill, they're going to be 18 in the next year or so.
I can't look
That's
past
what they-
November.
Yeah, and that's what they're watching, and that's how they're getting influenced.
This is the
Hey,
problem of being, this
I
is
mean,
the
look
problem
at
of
the
being
George
old
Floyd-
is.
Look at the
You know,
George Floyd protests.
I've heard
Those
this
weren't fueled by old
every
people.
election since, I started working in elections 50 years ago. This is going to be the year where young people show up and make a big difference.
We're not saying that.
But look
I'll
at the
never
George
forget
Floyd
one of
election.
the, one of the
Look
mayoral forums.
Look at the George Floyd protests. Those were fueled by young people, not older people.
Fueled by
And I'd
social
say-
media.
Yeah.
Social media, and I'd say they'd have more of a policy impact than electing any one individual. You've seen cities and states and localities shift different policies and have different discussions based on those protests more than electing one person.
And
One
of the
demographic
mayoral
I think
forums-
is linchpin in a very tight election will be our growing Asian population. I mean,
Hispanic.
look, I'm not gonna
Hispanic is gonna
pretend-
be the real.
I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on it. How do they fall? And just an educated opinion within Harris County. Is it 50-50? Is it 40-60? I mean, I asked both Chau and Mustaffa.
Well, I mean, I don't have that data, but I have
No, I mean, just
anecdotal
an
data.
opinion.
I have anecdotal data, and Vietnamese citizens, it's very split. If
Well,
you're
you
coming from a
can't-
different generation, when
can't
you're
throw all
opening up your nail
Asians.
shop or your convenience store, you're thinking with your pocketbooks. You're not thinking.
And you can't throw all Asians into the same pack. And your
No,
Koreans
you
or
can't.
That's
That's
not
not
trying
Vietnamese or
to.
from
Not
Chinese
trying
are
to.
way
That's-
different from the South Asians, the Pakistanis and the Indians.
I think there's a lot of diversity within that. I think they're up for grabs. I think they are probably better, more crossover voters than others would be.
Right.
And they are pretty good at authentic candidates that trying to genuinely reach out to them. They usually kind of pick up on that stuff, right? And so I think that candidates that actually make a real effort, that are really in the community, benefit both by votes and on their fundraising. I mean, it's a community that not only can deliver votes in suburbs. I think there's a lot of Asians in the western part of Harris County. I don't think people realize how many. Like, I live in West Houston, and it's a fairly large population of Asian Americans there. So I think it is a growing vote. I think it's 6-7% of the electorate. I think Bill's right that the Hispanic vote is much bigger in our state, especially, and that's also diversifying. And I think it's misunderstood. I think people sometimes give the Valley and what's happening there a lot more credence. There are probably more Hispanic, or as many Hispanics in Precinct 2 in Harris County that are in the entire Valley. Right? There's a math to this as well.
Right.
And so the Valley is a different place. It's really border economy, and 44,000 border agents and the economy that they support, right? So I don't think these are simple. I don't think that these are simple answers or questions, but our state is a great laboratory for what the country is going to look like, not just demographically,
That's true.
how
yeah.
we handle our politics.
Yeah. I think
Well-
it's interesting. If you go look at the Republican precinct chair list right now, I'll bet a quarter of them, maybe 30%, are Hispanic or have
Mhm.
Hispanic surnames.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, look, I asked Mark Jones once, what percentage of the Hispanic vote, Latino vote statewide, do the Democrats have to lock up in order to win statewide? And it was something like, just to have a chance, it was close to 70%. And I'm
Not
not
gonna
sure
get
they're
that.
there this time.
Mm-mm.
George
Mm.
W. was famous for knocking out like 44-45% of the Hispanic vote. Abbott has done okay with them. I think they're going to do better than ever. I think there's also a big, and this is intramural stuff, but there's a black-brown divide and a power struggle going on internally within the Harris County Democratic Party right now. And I think there are a lot of African Americans who are disenchanted with Lena Hidalgo, but they're normal Democratic voters. And may either sit on their hands in that race, or say I'll vote for you, but vote for Alex Mueller. I mean, I don't know. That's just because I do
Go
this
down
for
the
a living,
Democratic.
and this is overtime, and I'm just speculating. But I think it's
You go down the
educated.
Democratic. You go down the Democratic. You tell me who's the inspirational candidate. that's going to turn out votes?
Nobody.
I just don't see anybody.
I just think,
Or
look,
Republican at that.
look, I think it, like when you look at polling early on, if you look at Biden's number, they're weakest amongst Democrats, not amongst Republicans. And as you get closer and closer to the election, people come home to their party. And so you're likely to see that consolidation of that vote.
Yeah, but the majority of
Poll
voters
numbers
are now independent, aren't they, Bill?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think, I think the independents are going to decide most elections as they've done since the beginning of, our democracy. But at the end of the day, I think that the polling numbers will come a lot closer. And I think we haven't mentioned President Trump, but if he makes a lot of trips to Texas, that has an impact too on both sides, right?
I don't think
turns out
he's
the
coming to
vote-
Texas.
I agree
turns out
with
the vote
I
of the
agree with Mustapha.
Democrats.
I think the results in November will be closer than the polling is now. But the polling is so awful right now. I just don't see how you make up that difference. And my guess is that it's going to be a lower turnout election. I think it might be lower than 2018 actually. And if it is, that's going to favor Republicans. Look, I'd love to see Mike Collier win that race. I just don't see how he possibly does it.
I think
but-
low turnout always benefits Republicans. But
Yeah.
look, at the same time, I've just seen in the last few off-year cycles, we've seen the turnout get larger and larger. And each cycle, we think the turnout's not going to be good, and it turns out to be better than we expect. And that's something.
Greg, can I mention a topic we didn't talk about, but I think has been undercovered that's is really of concern
Yeah, I'm sorry about
to
that,
me.
Gary.
And that is the attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh by a
Oh,
26-year-old. Here's what, of course, it obviously bothers me. It bothers me that
bothers
the
me.
House can pass a bill protecting our judges. It passed unanimously in the Senate. It's being held up there. Why? I guess politics. But what troubles me the most is the mainstream media's lack of coverage. The New York Times put it on page 20. The Houston Chronicle, I don't think covered it at all. And I think that's just the pattern that happened from the left-wing press. Can you imagine what the coverage would be if the attack was on RBG, that she was threatened when she was alive, or on Sonia Sotomayor? Think about that. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Gary, are you
It
following
doesn't
that?
matter where they're from.
Are you following that closely? Apparently, the young man believed that Kavanaugh is the one that leaked the memo, and he's to the right of Kavanaugh.
Actually, that's not true. He said no. What happened was, after the abortion protesters printed Kavanaugh's home address and the other judges too, and then they started protesting outside their house, this kid comes in from California who is a liberal and attempted to murder him. That's what happened. It's not because he's to the right of Kavanaugh. That's just not true. Yeah, that's just not right.
No, but I'm
That's not
honestly,
right. And I'm right that the media didn't cover it. Okay,
you're right.
Does Kavanaugh deserve to die? Maybe that's their theory. I have no idea. But the fact this is tolerated is part of the climate of violence we have in this country. That's my point.
I'm looking to agree with you. I'm looking to agree with you.
It doesn't matter who the justice was.
But I'm asking you a question. Have you drilled down and read on his comments or not? I'm asking.
The information I have read about him indicates he's from the left. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether he's left or right. It's the coverage of the attempted assassination of a Supreme Court justice, regardless of their political philosophy, should be outrageously intolerable. In page 1 above the fold in all our newspapers.
I agree.
But they covered it up.
Agree.
I agree. We agree.
All right, hey,
I don't know.
our time has come to an end. I'm coughing. I want to close by offering congratulations to Mustapha's son, who graduates this morning, I believe.
Yes.
Rob.
Very excited about that.
And thank you for spending time with us on a busy morning.
So you're getting him
Guys,
off the
have a great
payroll. That's the
week.
question.
Where's he graduating from?
No. So my middle son is graduating from Westside High School, and he is going
Okay,
to.
great.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Wonderful.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Oh, by the way, Gary, I think you read these pleadings. I believe it was Trianta Phyllis's lawyer, and referred to this particular station, the one that we're all on, as a right-wing media outlet.
Yeah, the thing is, as I told you, Greg, look, what's your point is fair and balanced. We have a diversity of opinions from the far left to the far right and in between. Maybe same people have the different opinions, but that's just ludicrous. that motion is dead on arrival. It is not going to get, it's not even serious. Their facts weren't even right. They also suggested that someone else that I know and know, a doctor, was involved with coordinating with Kiamog and going after Lena Hidalgo, when of course the district attorney's office indicted this doctor. So it's all just garbage. It's politics. They're trying to put their spin on what they're facing to help Lena politically by saying, oh, it's all politics. But they forget that the district attorney is a liberal Democrat. They forget that. But okay, move on.
Hey, one question. Based upon the evidence you've seen so far, were laws broken by Lena Hidalgo's staff?
Oh, I don't think there's any question they broke the law. And I've said a few times, Greg, on the show, I think that her lawyers have not served her well, and she hasn't served herself well by continuing to talk about it from a legal standpoint. And I understand there's a battle here between the legal, what's important and what's important politically. Well, politically, it might be important, but legally, you're just digging your grave. You're giving the state more information they can use against your client. So if I was her lawyer, I'd advise her, don't talk about the case.
Final question to Mustaffa. And I know you actually charge money for this, so you may not give me the full answer. But you've watched that media strategy. Is that what you would advise? Kind of this counteroffensive?
Look, I just I think the longer this plays, the more damaging it could become. And you got to find a way to stem this conversation from the public space. The fight of this loses independent voters, and so you got to end that fight. And it's an interest on all sides to end this fight, because this is not playing well in the press. It's not playing well with the public. So whatever it takes to end the fight, that's what you need to do. All
right. With that, I bid you all farewell. Have a great Sunday.
You too.
Thanks, Greg.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.